CNN has learned that Jeffrey Epstein's convicted accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, has been moved to a new prison. Maxwell has been serving a 20-year prison sentence in Florida. She's now headed to a minimum security prison in Texas.
CNN's Caitlin Polantz joins us now. So, Caitlin, talk to us about this new prison that she's going to and why she's being moved.
Why is going to be the question here definitely today. But we do know from the Bureau of Prisons, they have confirmed through a spokesperson that Ghislaine Maxwell was moved from a federal prison camp in Tallahassee, Florida, to a low security prison in Bryan, Texas. So that's northeast of Austin. The difference there, it doesn't sound that much different, minimum security, low security, but it actually is pretty different. A camp where she was before, people move about freely, there are nonviolent offenders, or I'm sorry, where she was before, there are very likely to be violent offenders, gang members, the risk is higher. And where she is now, that would be white collar offenders, people who would not be considered to have as much risk as they would have had at places like where she was in Florida. Two people at the prison that she is now in Bryan, Texas. Two women, you may have heard of them before, Elizabeth Holmes from the company Theranos, and then Jen Shaw from the TV show The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Those are the types of women, nonviolent, white-collar offenders, where Ghislaine Maxwell is now. But you asked why. The Justice Department, the Bureau of Prisons, is not telling us the reason for this move. But I did speak to a prison consultant just a few minutes ago who was saying that from her perspective, this is quite good. It would be something that she would want.
From Maxwell's perspective.
From Maxwell's perspective. It's more comfortable at the camp, or at where she is in Texas, the camp. But from the Justice Department's perspective, she was speaking to the Deputy Attorney General just a couple weeks ago. That signals she may be a cooperator, and that puts her at a higher risk when there are people around her who may be potentially more violent as the inmates. So it may be one of the security decisions, but there also could be the possibility of some leniency happening here.
Wow. Really interesting. Caitlin, thank you so much for that. Let's bring in Dave Ehrenberg. He's a former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. He's also known Attorney General Pam Bondi for many years and worked as her drug czar in the Florida Attorney General's office. All right, Dave, so according to our Caitlin Polantz's reporting, this is a nicer prison, fewer violent offenders, more white-collar criminals. What are the possible reasons for why Maxwell would have been moved here?
Brianna, good to be with you. Well, it comes closely after Todd Blanche, the #2 person at the Department of Justice, met with her in private, spent hours with her getting her testimony, information about the whole Epstein scandal. And now we see her move to a minimum security facility. Apparently, this is the same facility where Elizabeth Holmes is in Texas. It's a much better facility. She was taken out of Tallahassee at a low security facility and put into one which has a lower staff to inmate ratio. These are like dorms rather than cells. There's no perimeter fencing, so it's much better. Now, is it because of what she said to Todd Blanche, or is it because during the many hours that her attorney and Ghislaine Maxwell spent with the head of the Department of Justice, #2 person there, that they convinced him to get her moved? Because the decision on moving a prisoner is up to the Bureau of Prisons. And who does the Bureau of Prisons report to? The Department of Justice.
Okay, so, you know, could it also be, I mean, if she's seen as someone who is cooperating, I mean, is she at risk there? And what kind of happens behind the scenes to negotiate something like this?
Well, this is a benefit, clearly. And it's something that the attorney for Ghislaine Maxwell would have mentioned to Todd Blanche. Said, hey, we've been spending 9 hours together. You can see she's testifying in good faith, honestly and openly. Can you at least send her to a better facility? I can see that conversation happening. And by the way, that happens, that inmates are transferred among facilities. It's nothing illegal or necessarily unethical, but the timing, of course, does raise eyebrows because it happens right after. And President Trump is saying that he's not dangling a pardon. He doesn't even want to have that conversation. But this is part of the discussions, perhaps, that Ghislaine Maxwell looks like she did give the administration what they wanted. And as a result, she was moved to a better facility.
Yeah, like kind of what the appearance is there. I also wanted to ask you, Dave, because you're such a good person to ask this of. There's so much focus on the Epstein files, and the original Epstein files were in Palm Beach, where you were state attorney after the criminal case against Epstein was closed. But as you know, Epstein had, pulled his cameras, his hard drives before police searched his house. Authorities, I believe, never subpoenaed that. Correct me if I'm wrong. And you have victims, lawyers, and even journalists who have covered this case who have questioned whether some of the state files, like the original files, may have actually been missing a lot of things and a lot of documents. Do you think that's the case?
It's hard to say, Brianna. There was an effort to get the grand jury transcripts at the state level, and the legislature had to change the law to release the grand jury transcripts. So now we see that. But that wasn't anything huge because we already knew most of the stuff there. So now the focus is on the Epstein files, which the Department of Justice has collected, and they have it in their possession in Washington, D.C. To your question, did the stuff from the state files get up to the files in D.C.? Probably. I am not aware of anything that has been missing. The thing that I am most interested in is that when the feds went into Jeffrey Epstein's Manhattan mansion, they had to use an axe to break into his safe. And when they broke into his safe, they found thumb drives. What's on those thumb drives? We don't know. So that's all part of the files. So that's another reason why people want to see this. It's more than just the grand jury transcripts at the federal level. That's only a portion of what people are looking for. They're looking for the files.
Yeah, and I wonder if you think this grand jury stuff is a bit of a distraction, considering looking at, the grand jury stuff in Florida. It was even thought by investigators that wasn't, fulsomely pursued by prosecutors as it should have been. Maybe not as informative as some people would want it to be. Do you think that that's a distraction, this grand jury stuff?
Well, I do think that even if they get the grand jury materials at the federal level, it will only be a small portion of what the public is demanding. I think the Attorney General was right to say there is no client list because there is no client list, and to say that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself because he did kill himself. But as far as what's in the files, it's going to be a lot more than what's in the grand jury transcripts, especially now that we're hearing that only 1 or 2 witnesses testified before that grand jury, and it was law enforcement. So if you want to know what third parties were involved in the sex trafficking ring, you're not going to get it from the grand jury transcripts. And that's why there's still that clamoring to get those files, which may never be released.
Yeah. Dave Aronberg, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.